I don't remember the first stock car race I saw, but I do remember how I wanted to drive one of those cars. When I was growing up and getting interested in cars as a teenager, the closest I came to a stock car race was a radio. Back in those days, stock car races weren't on television. It was probably the 60s before they were ever on television. My knowledge of the sport was what I heard on the radio and read in the sports section of the daily newspaper. The local paper had all the results of the NASCAR races, as well as results of the local dirt track races. After I got out of high school, I was able to attend more of the local dirt track races. A fellow in our church owned a garage and also owned a race car, which ran at the local track. My buddies and I always pulled for his car. It was the only car that was powered by a Chrysler engine. The local track was a quarter-mile of hard-packed red clay. On the first few laps, the cars would throw big chunks of red clay into the grandstands. There were local heroes, of course, and villains. There was a girl in my class in school whose daddy was a dirty driver. The poor girl hardly had any friends at all. There was a teenage phenom at the local track too, a kid from Georgia named Buck Simmons. He wasn't old enough to have a driver's license, but he won a lot of races. Actually, he won over 1,000 dirt track races before his death at 66 years of age. The fastest cars that ran on the local track were Skeeters. Skeeters had highly modified bodies of old cars with wings on their roofs and fuel-injected late model V8 engines. They would approach 90 miles per hour on the straightaways, a lot faster than the old 1930s coupes and sedans. Two Lesties of Knoxville, Tennessee was my favorite Skeeter driver. Back in those days, Glenn Fireball Roberts was my favorite driver in NASCAR. He won a lot of races. I remember that he was severely burned in a wreck at the World 600 in Charlotte on May 24th, my birthday, and died on my brother's birthday, July the 2nd. The death of drivers always brought about new safety devices in NASCAR. Through the years, I continued to follow stock car racing. My interest got a big boost when I was working at Lowe's Home Centers when the company sponsored a NASCAR race car. The company really got into racing with a slick publication about racing. Brett Bodine drove the number 11 car built by the legendary Junior Johnson. The number 11 Lowe's Thunderbird didn't win a race. Mike Skinner drove the number 31 Chevrolet sponsored by Lowe's for Richard Childress Racing. Their 31's only win was in a race in Japan with Skinner in the driver's seat. With number 48 on the side of the car, Jimmy Johnson as a driver, the winning combination had been found. When the CEO of Lowe's, Bob Tillman, asked Johnson if he could win, Johnson said he could. He won 83 times, and he drove the Lowe's Chevrolet to 7 NASCAR championships. I went to the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte. It was a lot of fun and very informative. I was surprised to find out many of the cars were not originals, but replicas built for the museum. Prior to the opening of the NASCAR Hall of Fame Museum in 2010, I visited North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame in Mooresville. Though much, much smaller, it had all authentic cars. The only Chevrolet Richard Petty drove was there. I did some drawings there too. In May, it happened. My wife gave me a gift certificate to the NASCAR racing experience, and I would be driving around the Darlington Raceway, the famous Lady in Black. Needless to say, I was excited. We arrived at the track mid-afternoon. The car I would be driving was number 14 Chevrolet, formerly driven by Tony Stewart. There's only one way to get into one of those cars, through the window, and that is the way the drivers do it. By the way, the seats are not movable, but are adjusted for a particular driver.
A little slow.
Since I'm taller than Tony Stewart, I had to sit a bit hunched over, hardly comfortable. Driving around the track was like nothing I'd ever done before. When you're on the bank corners, the track in front looks flat. I'd driven on the same asphalt as Fireball Roberts, Junior Johnson, Richie Petty, Dale Earnhardt, Bill Elliott, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. When we returned home that day, I checked the website to find my speed had been only 129.26 miles per hour. It could have been more, but the more you paid, the faster you were allowed to go. But I had really enjoyed my ride. The dream came true. And I'd never look at a NASCAR race the same again.